Ray Dalio, one of the most famous investors of all time, just made a very, very ominous prediction about America's debt crisis that he thinks is actually a lot closer than most people think. We are talking about a handful of years here. And as we can see, Dalio has issued a dire warning of America's death spiral. And he's also told people how they can protect themselves. So obviously Dalio recently made a little bit of a pivot into Bitcoin, and he has kind of changed his tune on Bitcoin here. So today I want to explore this question of, is Bitcoin a solution to America's debt crisis? And has Donald Trump been handed a little bit of a debt ticking time bomb? Because a lot of people have kind of been pointing to the fact that Trump might really have his work cut out for him as we kind of transition into this Trump-led era for the next 4 years that we're going to expect to be getting. So this was the article that I saw this week that was really interesting. Again, a lot of people kind of didn't pay much attention to this interview that Dalio recently did because everybody's talking about Trump and all of the crazy things that he's been talking about since he got into office. But we need to be paying very close attention to what Dalio is saying, because he makes a good point. We are in a crisis right now when it comes to the national debt, don't you think, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it took us from 1776 to the 1980s to amass our first $1 trillion worth of debt. By the time that Trump took over, I mean, we were looking at, I think it was 12. He took it from 12 to 20, and then Biden from 20 to 36. Yeah, I mean, it's just going up exponential right now, right? And we are in the middle of course, Triffin's dilemma. We have the world reserve currency, which has, yeah, there you go. And that's 31 trillion. Today we're at 36, right? So it's gone even steeper than that. But as you can see from that chart, it really doesn't matter who the president is in terms of which party they are from. This country is addicted to debt. And when your number one export is printed up pieces of paper, it's pretty easy to understand why that's the case. The fact that the rest of the world will accept our paper for their goods, their hard goods, their oil, their manufactured products. It puts you in the situation where it's the easiest thing to do is just to print them up and send them out and get in debt. And it works great while it works, but then one day it doesn't. And it seems as if that day is getting closer and closer. And that's what Ray Dalio is talking about.
Yeah, I think the more recent statistics I saw was the fact that America is printing $1 trillion every 100 days, which is just crazy to think about. You brought up a statistic here about how long it took us to accumulate the first $1 trillion of debt. It was literally hundreds of years. And now we're printing $1 trillion of debt in 100 days versus 100 years. Think about a lot of people really struggle to conceptualize this idea of exponentials and how rapidly things are changing. But right now, we are in an era where the debt is going exponential. And when people like Ray Dalio are warning us about the debt crisis that we're living in, we really do need to be paying very close attention, because, again, he's one of the most successful investors for good reason. People listen to what Dalio says, and I think it's just wild that nobody seems to have a solution for the national debt.
I mean, it's just like end of empire stuff. It's classic, right? We spent $8 trillion on the Middle East, on Iraq and Afghanistan. And what did we get out of that? The Taliban took Afghanistan back over. We left $80 billion worth of military equipment when we fled. And now, I mean, Iraq is a mess, and they give most of their oil to China. So while we were going out and spending $8 trillion on war, China was able to take trillions of dollars and spend it on infrastructure and building up their industrial base. So, yeah, but I mean, this is a story as old as time, right? I mean, it really echoes the Roman Empire in so many ways. And they did the same thing. They devalued their money, they clipped their coins, and eventually their money ran out of the purchasing power that they needed to fund the armies to maintain the empire. So I think what we're seeing right now with this Trump administration is trying to sidestep that, or at least take proactive measures in order to, if you know that this ship is going down, at least you can do it on your own terms. And I think that's what we're seeing in terms of the Ukraine negotiations and Europe, us separating ourselves from Europe, us repatriating all this gold from Switzerland, us creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. There's really some monumental changes afoot right now, just within the first 6 weeks of this new presidency. And I think Bitcoiners are positioned best to for what comes next. So what do you think? Is this the end of the American empire?
Yeah, I think it is close to the end of the American empire. I was trying to bring up this chart here in the background, and I wanted to bring it up because you mentioned the fact that we're at the end of an empire. And this is something that Dalio has really kind of popularized. Okay, he's talked a lot about how these global reserve currency holders over the past 500 years have seen transitions. And he has kind of become very famous for saying, look, the American empire is declining and the Chinese empire is rising. And he expects that the Chinese empire is going to try to challenge the great American empire. And his books are incredible. I've read Big Debt Crises. I hope that's how you say it. And his more recent, newer book, the name is escaping my decaffeinated, dehydrated brain right now. I think it's The Rise and the Fall of Empires. That's what it's called. And in that book, he studied the 10 biggest empires over the past 500 years. And he showed how they go through these, 250-year cycles. So an empire will rise for 200 years and then it will go through a 50-year decline. And I think it's a really great point you raised there, and you brought it up. America is seeing this debt crisis, this debt issue, and everybody is kind of looking around saying, what's the solution? What comes next? Well, if history is any guide, history will say that America is going to find a challenger soon. Is it China? I personally don't think so. I personally actually think China's very weak and they're artificially strong because of what globalization has given them. I think in a deglobalized world, America is actually still the strongest nation in the world. This is something a lot of people forget about China. It's energy poor. It's food poor. It is very reliant on imports from other countries, and it is suffering from a water crisis. It simply doesn't have water in the country. So I think these are lots of things people forget and miss about China. And, I think we're trying to give you guys both sides of the story because Dalio is obviously a massive China bull. Yeah. And again, another great point that All Night Hider here in the chat mentions is the fact that the US has great demographics. China does not. And I think all of these things really do need to be considered when we're talking about how America and China could interact with each other as we could be. Again, who knows? Pimp barbecue sauce. I love the name, by the way. But some people are saying we are at the end of this American empire and the debt is this insurmountable issue. But who knows what's going to come next? How can Bitcoin save the dollar? Now, before I show you the rest of this rabbit hole, just want to remind you guys, if you wanted to join in on the fun and also buy some Bitcoin, we always encourage you guys to check out what Rhino Bitcoin is doing. We call them the all-in-one Bitcoin super application for very good reason. They're the best place for you guys to buy your Bitcoin, but you can also sell Bitcoin on Rhino. You can send Bitcoin anywhere around the world using the Lightning Network on Rhino, and they're even giving you guys $10 of free Bitcoin if you sign up with Rhino and use a promo code Bitcoin News. So we always encourage you guys to check out what Rhino is doing. And if you are looking to not only learn more about Bitcoin, but learn more about Bitcoin mining, we also encourage you guys to check out the largest Bitcoin mining conference in the entire world that is happening in about 2 weeks' time from now. So between March 25th and March 27th, in Florida, Mining Disrupts is holding their annual conference in America, and it promises to be the biggest conference yet. You're going to have some massive speakers like Dennis Porter, Nico Moran, and there's even going to be some very big politicians giving some talks at Mining Disrupt 2025. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, Guys, you've only got 2 weeks left to buy your tickets, and you can get 20% off your tickets if you use a promo code Bitcoin News. Now let's get back to the rest of the news.
Yeah, so I think the comments here bring up a lot of good points. Demographics is destiny, right? And China's one-child policy, they shot themselves in the foot. By the end of this century, their population, which is at 1.2 billion or so right now, is going to be cut in half, right? They're going to lose 600 million people in that country. And they just, it's set up like an inverse pyramid, right? Where there's one child who has to support 2 parents, who has to support 4 grandparents. And it's very hard for that society to function in the decades ahead. That means, I mean, I think China knows this, and they've been doubling down, tripling down on robotics. I think they see that as the way of maintaining themselves as the world factory by using robots to do the hard work on the factory lines. But when I say the end of the American empire, I do not mean the end of America. And I do think that the Trump administration right now knows that if they can get ahead of this, they can set America up for the future. America has been the world police. We've provided safe travel on the seas across the world for every single nation to conduct trade. And that's benefited a lot of other countries. Some would say more than it's benefited America itself. So if America is able to sort of go back to like a Monroe Doctrine where we focus on the Western Hemisphere, that's why I think Trump is always talking about making Canada the 51st state and taking over Greenland. He wants those resources so that America can sort of be self-sufficient in our side of the world, right? If we've got the additional oil from Canada and we've got the rare earth minerals from Greenland, we've got all the agricultural base that we could ever need here in America itself. And so if we can bring back manufacturing through tariffs, incentivize companies to build factories here in America, we have the natural resources that we need to continue on for hundreds of more years. And so I don't think when we say the end of the American empire, it actually could be better off not only for the American citizens, but the world in general.
Oh, it's such a beautiful note to end things on there, Rob. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with America over the next 10 years. Are they going to use Bitcoin as this strategic asset to help fix all of the problems that a lot of us see with the US dollar and with America? I think it's certainly a possibility. If you are one of the 7,000 of you guys joining us live between Twitter and YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in on a Friday afternoon. If you joined us late, you can rewind to the beginning of the stream and check out everything Rob and I covered in what was one of the more craziest weeks in Bitcoin. I do think the past 24 hours was probably the most eventful 24 hours I've ever seen in the Bitcoin space. I've been here for 9 years, I believe now. It's 8 years. It's time flies when you're having fun, Rob. And it's pretty crazy how quickly things are happening right now. So I'd encourage everybody, strap in. The next 6 to 12 months could be really interesting. As All Night Hider has said, smoke that like button. Cheech and Chong, we would appreciate a smoking of the like button if you did enjoy this 1 hour and 10-minute live stream from Rob and myself. Rob, have you got any final words of wisdom you want to leave the listeners with tonight?
Yeah, know what you own. If you hold private keys, you've got the ability to alter the Bitcoin ledger, right? And this is now deemed a strategically important asset by the United States government, the largest economy in the world. So you were able to front run the US government, pat yourself on the back for that, but don't stop there. Keep stacking, stay humble, enjoy the weekend, and it's good to be a Bitcoiner.